Welcome, everybody. My name is James Wilson, Director of the Research on Research Institute, and it is my immense pleasure to be sharing this short, sharp, but hopefully informative and edifying discussion of our new report, which has come out this morning, Funding by Algorithm. And this is the main output from the GRAIL project that we have been running at RoRI on responsible uses of AI and machine learning for research funders and funding organizations. It's also the beginning, sort of yesterday, today, of a 10-day sort of summer of meta science that we are at the center of here at RoRI. I hope many of you online are also joining us for the Meta Science 2025 meeting, which will start in earnest on the 30th of June and run for 3 days. But before that, we're also running this whole season of online virtual symposia, and there are various other sort of fringe meetings happening around the Meta Science conference itself. So it's a really rich period, busy period as well, for those of us involved in these discussions. And we're really delighted to have this very important piece of work out as part of that. This is the product of a long collaboration involving many of RoRI's partners. You're going to hear from several of those over the course of the next 50 minutes or so. We won't have a lot of time for questions and discussion in this seminar, but I would encourage colleagues to make full and rich use of the chat function as our outlet for questions, discussions, and we'll try certainly and pick up any questions that come up through that insofar as time allows. But this isn't the only chance to discuss this. There will be a session on this project and related debates at Meta Science 2025. There'll also be one of the big keynote panels at Meta Science 2025, which is looking also at broader uses of AI in the science system and some of the meta sciencey questions and dilemmas that arise from that. So plenty of chance, I hope, at the big conference to also engage in more discussion of this. All it remains for me to do is to say, firstly, a huge thank you to the team responsible for this project. So you're going to hear in a moment from Denny, who's led the team from the RoRI core research side, and colleagues Helen and Yo-Yo and Mike Thirlwell and others who've been involved. And then, of course, our really important collaborations with all of the partners who, in line with RoRI's general working model, we try and make the ideal of co-production a real thing in the way that we work with our partners. So Jon Holm in particular is chair of the working group, but many others who have contributed in various ways. It's a great report. I think it's a really, really valuable, important, timely contribution to these debates, but also a great reflection of the strengths of that kind of way of working. So with that, I will shut up and hand over with pleasure to Denny, who's going to give us a flavour of what's in the report. It's a very rich report. I do encourage people to read it, but Denny's going to give us some of the highlights. Over to you, Denny.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, James. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Really, really excited to be holding this event and to be welcoming you and celebrating launching this handbook, which we've been looking forward to with great anticipation for quite a while. So my job is to talk about where this came from. So tell you a little bit about the GRAIL project that produced this and sort of what kinds of questions are driving the debates and the discussions and the co-production that led to this handbook. And we're in this space right now of talking about AI as transformation for everything. So why not talk about AI as transformation for research funding? Well, this is something we've been talking about in RoRI for quite a while. So we co-organized with the Research Council of Norway a series of webinars back in 2021 of online workshops that were looking at what is good use of AI and machine learning, so machine learning being part of the sort of broader umbrella of AI. What does good use of these technologies look like for funding organizations? So we produced a report that came out of that. It was our 10th working paper that you're seeing just here on the screen. And I think some really valuable things came out of that report, certainly identifying some key directions, some good insights. But the biggest thing that came out was we need to have a longer discussion about this. So we know that funders have an enormous amount of information, of data, of knowledge, of expertise to learn from. AI technologies can help in doing that, can help to learn from that information, but we need to know how to use them effectively, ethically, and equitably to really support the role of funders and to support the research systems that they work in. So we developed in response to this the GRAIL project, which is Getting Responsible About AI and Machine Learning and Research Funding and Evaluation. It's a little bit shorter when we just called it GRAIL. And this really had three pieces to it. So the core of GRAIL was a community of learning. And this really drives from RoRI's co-productive approach that James was just mentioning. We're working very closely with a fantastic group of funders throughout the 2 years of this project. So building a community of learning around AI, but also understanding how is AI being used currently in research funding and in research assessment, and how can we help to shape what better, more informed future practice can look like in this space. So we had the real pleasure of working with 13 different funder partners in the course of this project, and working in partnership with these funders really was the core of what we were doing throughout. We wanted to make sure that this was knowledge, insights, recommendations being produced by the people and with the people who would then be using it. So you'll see the wonderful list of all of our funders here on the screen. You'll hear from several of them in a moment. I'll just run through them very quickly because it's really important to us to thank Research Council of Norway, the Swiss National Science Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, UKRI, NWO in the Netherlands, Novo Nordisk Foundation, the Australian Research Council, the Volkswagen Foundation, the German Research Foundation, the Austrian Science Fund, Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council in Canada, the Swedish Research Council, and the Lakeisha Foundation. Working in close contact and collaboration with these partners is what made GRAIL work and is what led to the handbook that we're launching today. And again, I want to thank as well Helen Buckley-Woods, who's my co-lead on the project, and Mike Thelwall and Yo-Yo Wu, who are on the research team. So what we were doing with this was really, as I said, built around this idea of a community of learning. So we developed and ran over the course of 2 years a series of workshops that were really meant to be discussion spaces, to bring funders together, to bring, different staff, different levels of organizations, different roles, people who are working around this idea of how do we go about using AI and machine learning in the work of funding and evaluation, and talk about key topics that arose in that. So we kicked off with talking about ChatGPT and generative AI. The project was one of those very fortuitously timed things, and that we got started right about when generative AI was coming into the mainstream. We talked about AI and research evaluation. We talked about what creating good guidance is. We went through many different case studies of examples of how funders are using AI and machine learning in their work, and how we can then drill down onto the kinds of organizational challenges and insights and good practices, how we build in human in the loop, how funders can collaborate and reuse resources and knowledge between each other, and so on. And so this gave us a really valuable space for having discussions about what does shared learning and shared practice look like in this space. So we then added to this some survey work understanding how is it that funders are using AI now. And one of the key parts of this, working in collaboration with the Agora project, another major effort that RoRI is leading on responsible research assessment globally, was we collaborated on looking at how AI is being used in the work of research assessment. And so there was a report released with the Global Research Council just last month that includes some insights here. And we see that over 50% of the funders who responded to our questions about AI are seeing clear benefit from exploring AI. 1 in 3 are using AI in finding reviewers and panel members now. And what I think really stuck out for us and reflected the conversations that we were seeing is that when we asked funders about who is involved in exploring AI, is this just a technical problem? The clear answer was no. This is having these discussions, making these decisions is something that cuts across all departments, all elements of a funding organization, all kinds of specialties. It requires working across boundaries. And so we saw that there was this really clear need. GRAIL was driven by this very clear need for mutual learning and for shared practice between funders, between people working in this space, to share how can we move together, how can we move forward together. And this is where our report, our handbook that we're launching today comes in. So we're tremendously excited to be launching Funding by Algorithm, our handbook for responsible uses of AI and machine learning by research funders. So there's a QR code on the slide here. I think the link was posted in the chat a little bit earlier. So this has been a monumental effort with working very closely with all of our funder partners on this project. And what we've really aimed to do with this handbook is to provide a starting point for funders and to focus not on how should you be using AI, why should AI be a force for transformation, and not to focus on specific technologies, things that change and shift under our feet, but to really drill down on the process and building capacity and building the kinds of skills for funders to work with resilience to the constantly evolving AI landscapes that we find ourselves in. So we build in this handbook talking about the foundations, the foundational understanding of AI and ML, why funders might want to explore AI and ML, what sorts of pressures are driving this, what are some of the key steps involved, how do we look at this from an organizational perspective and from a collaborative perspective, thinking about not just the technologies, but the people in the process. We're really delighted to feature 5 real-world case studies from 5 of our partner funders talking in detail about their experiences using AI technologies for different purposes. And we summarize then in the conclusion some of our key findings, our insights, and our recommendations for funders to take this forward. So I'll highlight just very briefly here some of our key recommendations as kind of the key takeaways, and then we'll hear get to hear from our funder partners about their experiences. So we built our recommendations from these discussions around the people, the practice, and the principles of how funders can work with AI and machine learning, and being driven by a perspective of evolution, focusing on problems, focusing on challenges, focusing on the goals that funders want to address in their work, rather than a perspective of revolution, of AI must come in and change everything. So being driven by models of engagement, being driven by a lack of a one-size-fits-all approach, understanding that use of AI must always be driven by the specific problems, the specific goals that funders are trying to address, and really shaping the principles and our ways of working for the funding context with the kinds of tools and technologies that we see in front of us now, and shaping that with the problems that we're trying to address. So what is this handbook for? We're obviously very excited to be putting it out there, but we want it to be used. And our goals for this handbook are to help to support funders in exploring new applications of AI, or to apply existing technologies and models, to bring people and processes and collaborations together to better understand and shape future use of AI, to share knowledge and best practice with others, and to adapt specific organization-driven ways of working with AI. So we see this as I said, a starting point for new discussions and for next steps in this space. This is a conversation that we are not concluding with this handbook, but that this is meant to be the starting point and a shared resource for talking in a more informed way as we move forward.
Hello.
And with that, I'll just say we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear about what you see in the handbook, what excites you, any kinds of reflections that you want to have. So please do get in touch with us at hello@researchandresearch.org. And obviously you'll hear from us more at Metascience as well. So James, thanks very much, and back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Denny, very much. That's great. If you now stop sharing your slide. There we are. Wow. Yeah, you can see the array of people who've joined us from all over. Welcome, everyone. We're going to hear now from 3 or 4 of the funders who are involved in the project, both about their reflections on its findings and also ways in which they are taking these insights forward in their own strategic planning and use of these new techniques in their own work as funders. And I'm delighted first to turn to Jon Holm, who is a special advisor at the Research Council of Norway, and as I mentioned earlier, has been the chair of the working group that has produced this report and the other outputs from GRAIL. And I mean, Jon has been going, I think, God, I can't it must go back to 2020 at least, Jon, when we began first talking about this topic, at least as an important theme for RoRI and for its funders. And of course, look at how the field overall has moved on in that time. So Jon, over to you.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Danny, for a presentation. So I will tell you a little bit about how the involvement in RoRI has changed the way we use AI at the Research Council of Norway. The Research Council was an early adopter to the AI revolution in the public sector, one could say. We started our first experiments around 2019 with support from external consultants that were already familiar with our council. And that was at the time where we realized that the data we had collected from our assessment processes and project portfolio for more than 20 years was a mine of gold. The initial projects aimed to identify areas where machine learning and AI could enhance efficiency and speed up processes. Our first AI services were implemented in highly intensive work processes like allocation of research proposals on expert panels and labeling of funded projects with various properties like disciplines, research themes, and business sectors. For these applications, we trained algorithms on our historical project portfolio that was already manually annotated and labeled by our scientific personnel. These new AI services were used as decision support, meaning that the final decision was always made by a human. Feedback from the scientific officers indicated that the decision support helped speed up the processes, but we also registered improvement in quality, like more coherent use of labels across themes and disciplines, or support for broader calls, where proposals for thematic and open calls were assessed by the same set of expert panels. And seeing that the application of artificial intelligence not only helps speed up existing processes, but also provided opportunities for improving and reforming these processes, we realized that we had to think more about how to use AI to support the broader strategic and organizational development. This shift in orientation of RCN from a technology-driven implementation of AI to, I would say, a more goal-driven approach coincided with our involvement in RoRI. Our cooperation with RoRI was kickstarted with a webinar series back in 2021 that Denny has already referred to. And this workshop helped broaden our understanding of the potential of the use of AI in research funding. I especially remember Ludo Woltman from CWTS in Leiden asking if we would be satisfied just with speeding up traditional peer review processes, or if the ambition should rather be to improve the review process altogether. We were also inspired by other funders like Wellcome Trust, who had integrated social scientists into their data lab to work alongside, social scientists into their data lab to work alongside data scientists. The task of these social scientists was to perform early assessments of impacts and risks as an integral part of the development process for new AI systems. So moving forward, our reflection on what it would take to use AI responsibly and purposefully in research funding has continued in the GRAIL project since 2023. And since 2021, we have also strengthened our internal capacity for using AI by integrating 3 data scientists into a larger department for data management, analysis, and evaluation. The GRAIL project has been instrumental to our development from a technology-driven to a goal and problem-driven way of developing AI services. It has been a great learning experience to work with 12 other research councils and a highly skilled team of researchers led by Jenny Newman-Griffiths. Together, we have co-created a framework for thinking about AI and using AI in the context of research funding that we are now proud to share with the world in the form of this handbook. One could argue that there is a substantial amount of literature available on artificial intelligence already, and that such a handbook will soon become defunct because of the continuous rapid development of AI technologies. I would answer that the handbook is unique by being produced by research funders for research funders. The lived experience from assessment processes in our respective councils has been the starting point for exploring the potential of artificial intelligence to make research funding more efficient and effective. This experience is also reflected in the final section of the handbook, where we present 6 cases on how research councils have applied artificial intelligence to solve specific problems. At RCN, we have really learned a lot from taking part in RoRI's project on AI. Our aim and hopes are that other funders will be inspired by the handbook to explore how they could use artificial intelligence in a way that reflects their own needs and values. So I thank you for your attention and wish you good luck with getting responsible about AI and machine learning in research funding and evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jon, very much. Great. We are moving from Norway to Bern in Switzerland, where we're now going to hear from Katrin Milzer, who is the co-director of the Swiss National Science Foundation and also the co-chair of RoRI's partnership board. Katrin, good to see you. Over to you.
Thank you, James. Hello, everybody. So I would like to do two things in the next 5 minutes. First, I would like to say something about how we have benefited from GRAIL at the SNSF while we've been developing our use of AI and machine learning at the SNSF. And then I would like to look forwards to see how we can use the handbook and build on the handbook to inspire our activities for the future. So how have we benefited from GRAIL? I think one main benefit was that we got an overview of different kinds of use cases that other funders were having for applying machine learning to support or develop their funding activities. What we saw was that one use case that we were working on, which is matching proposals to reviewers. So the use case that Jan also mentioned, that this was very common. So that was good in the sense that it shows that other funders also saw opportunity there. So in terms of priority setting, we were not too far off the mark, we felt. And it also gave us the opportunity to learn from each other. So for example, we got reassurance about the way we were developing those processes, about the technology we were applying. We also got benchmarks for efficiency and effectiveness. So we could compare how well those methods worked for us compared to how they worked for others. And our data team was able to share experience about specific AI models and approaches. So independently of the individual cases that we were looking on within GRAIL, the broad approach that the project took was extremely valuable for us. So if you look at the handbook, you see that it's really very broad. There's many organizational perspectives. Also this notion of AI thinking that Denis has coined, who steered the group really with a lot of expertise. So that it's not only about having a model, having an algorithm, it's really about how can data team staff work together with staff in the funding divisions, work together with IT to develop this, to build competence and trust, and also to start by developing the questions that need to be answered by identifying the projects, the problems that we are addressing. So this was really the essence of GRAIL, I think, as I experienced it, and extremely valuable to us at the SNF, also when we were working at projects outside GRAIL. So we have another project, for example, looking at peer review reports, where we classify peer review reports to analyze them. This is something we'll be presenting at the Meta Science Conference, so doing a little bit of advertisement. If you'd like to know about that, you will hear about it there. But there, I mean, that's what Denis said at the start. It's really about people, about processes, about practice, and all this can be translated from one project to another, and it's also independent of how the technology might evolve. So what are the perspectives for the future? And how can we build on this handbook to take our experience forward? So at the SNSF, we started using machine learning about at the same time as the Research Council Norway, also in 2019. And by the time GRAIL started, we were becoming more systematic about the way we were conducting these projects. But we were very much piloting potential applications. And today, I would say we're sort of getting quite experienced with this piloting. In some cases, we're moving towards maybe beta testing. But what's ahead of us is integrating these applications into our workflows and also our IT systems. And then also, once we have done this, to see whether the benefits we see at the moment, whether they scale. For example, in one of the panel matching use cases that we have, we saw that work that used to require weeks could be done within days. So this is really, I mean, a really positive development, but it also requires a lot of IT infrastructure and a lot of sort of setting up processes to make this work on a regular basis. And I think there the handbook, it really has this broad and long-term view. So beyond just the identifying a problem and developing a pilot, it also looks at what are the next step to operationalize that in the longer term and on a bigger scale. And so you have things like performance metrics, or how to do the monitoring, how to retrain algorithms so that they can also take up developments in research. So we're not like applying algorithms that are based on research that was done or the state in which research was 5 years ago. So I think all these are things that are ahead of us and where the handbook will be extremely valuable as a guide. To move from the pilot phase into a broader application and to remain responsible in the way we use AI. Because I think that's really, I mean, that's really the how can we ensure that we continue to abide by these principles and to remain responsible as we extend the use of AI. And then last, we have this community which will grow, I think. So we've worked together within GRAIL for the last few years. Hopefully this community will evolve and grow. Maybe the discussion will also continue to take place in other fora. And I think the GRAIL handbook will be a really good sort of anchor and starting point for taking that discussion forward, because it is so broad. It covers the different perspectives, also the different steps in implementing AI. It really will allow us to get back to that instead of reinventing the wheel as we expand the community and as we grow the community and as our experience grows with using AI. So that's what I wanted to contribute. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Catherine, very much. That's great. We're going to move south now, down to Barcelona, and we're going to hear from Ines Bouzon from La Caixa Foundation. Ines, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, James. So yeah, happy to be here at the launch of this handbook. And I will start by the name of the handbook because, in fact, I really like it. At La Caixa Foundation, we've been funding by algorithm for a few years now, always with a human in the loop. But yes, since the very first edition of our biomedical research funding call, we already implemented AI-assisted processes. At that time, we used AI for characterizing reviewers and matching them with applications. And this was 8 years ago. So this means that our journey started before AI became a hot topic in the society, in the majority of the society. And back then, we had to face many issues, starting with technical issues. We had to build up many of our processes from almost scratch or adapting models designed for completely different purposes. But thankfully, we were working closely with a technical partner, with a startup company called iThink. And also, apart from technical issues, we were also facing internal skepticism, which is natural when you are trying new things in an area as sensitive as the selection process, when where the outcome of AI directly affects who is awarded funding and who is not. All in all, we had a lot of doubts when we started. We wondered, for example, if the quality of our data was good enough to train the algorithms, or how we could assess that our AI models were properly working in terms of fairness, of reproducibility, and that we were using it in a responsible way, which is super important. But we believed in the potential of AI for in our funding schemes. And over time, we developed some solid and well-established processes, like the one I've mentioned before of matching reviewers with proposals, but also some others. And while we were going through this kind of solo journey, and when we already had a few consolidated AI processes in place, then we joined RoRI, and we joined some of the projects like GRAIL. And this was great for us, because actually one of the most valuable aspects of GRAIL has been, as Catherine was saying before, realizing that we were not alone in the use of AI for funding, that we are a lot of councils, a lot of founders, a lot of foundations, that we are in the same process. So we all have doubts, we all face limitations like the ones I've mentioned before, like technical, organizational, even ethical. And having a place to share our experiences and hear from others has been both encouraging and also useful, like practically useful. And this broad space like of GRAIL and RoRI in general for discussions and reflections with peers has helped us improve the AI processes we already had in place, and also has motivated us to develop new ones. And in fact, we've launched 5 new AI-related initiatives this year in the foundation, and having the opportunity to discuss them with other RoRI partners has been extremely valuable to design these new initiatives. So I think that transforming all this experience from all the partners of GRAIL into a handbook to share with everyone is like the natural next step, especially for an initiative like GRAIL, like based on sharing experiences and mutual learning, as Danny was saying before. So this is not only the natural next step, but is really useful. I mean, we hope we had this handbook when we started using AI. And I also think that it is especially valuable now, and especially timely, because AI is becoming more and more widespread, and a lot of people is using it. So these kind of initiatives like GRAIL and RoRI help ensure that AI adoption is effective, is ethical, and is equitable, as Danny was mentioning before also. And this is crucial because for people to truly accept and to truly embrace the use of AI in research and funding, they need to see not just the benefits of it, which may be crystal clear for funders, because AI can make selection processes more efficient and rapid and consistent, but also the care and thinking behind its implementation, which is especially important for researchers applying for the call, who need to see the science behind AI and the rigor we are using to implement it. So to conclude, what began as a solo effort has become a shared journey thanks to RoRI and GRAIL, and being part of this initiative and now having this handbook is, I think, truly good news for the research system. And we are happy to have contributed to it, and look forward to the future discussions this handbook will generate. So thank you.
Thank you, Ines, very much. So brace yourselves. We're going to head over the Atlantic to Ottawa for our final funder perspective. And we're going to hear from Alexandra at the Social Sciences Humanities Research Council in Canada. Alexandra, over to you.
Hi, all. Thank you very much for having me here. It's I hope you don't get head spin from traveling across the globe so quickly. I'll say that I'll keep it brief because my remarks will echo a lot of what the others have said. It's been invaluable to be part of this project, and in particular because of the connections that we've built with other funders. The format of the project allowed for that because we've had recurring meetings, and so you could reconnect with people and check your thinking against the benchmarks of what others are doing. And we've brought some of that thinking back into the organization through some meetings where we shared experiences and allowed others within the organization to learn about how other funders have been approaching AI. Specifically, during this project, we were developing our guidelines on the use of AI in developing applications and in use by reviewers. And the project allowed us to, from a practical and philosophical perspective, test how others were thinking about the implications of allowing use in different aspects of the application process, and to understand and receive different, understand how others had been approaching this, but also highlight ideas and concerns that we hadn't thought of ourselves. It also allowed us to compare ourselves and benchmark against how others were doing in the AI adoption to see whether we had similar organizational approaches, as well as to understand whether we had been moving at the same pace as our peers. SSHRC is in a particularly unique situation at the moment, because alongside its other Canadian funding councils, we are developing a wholly new solution for operational management, which will change how we handle applications and other internal processes, but also in time how we collect and manage our data. So at the moment, this represents an enormous strain on our resources. Basically, our technological scaffolding will completely change. But it also presents an opportunity for being intentional in our design of our future processes. And this may allow future integrations with AI and ML, because we can start from the very beginning and how we build our tech solution for accepting applications. And so from that perspective, I think the handbook has the potential to support that intentionality, because it provides a roadmap to making decisions about where to apply AI. It also allows us to think about how to build capacity within the organization to enable AI use. It allows us to think about how to integrate AI into operations and how to manage the associated change. Because obviously there's people who have been doing these tasks, and now they will have to transition to a whole new way of doing things if AI becomes part of the process. And obviously the book allows us to think more intentionally about how we assess outcomes. I think, to conclude, given how experimental AI is by nature, because it's new and it's an experiment in itself at the moment, I think the handbook will most importantly help bring rigor to implementation and use, and that's where we see value in it.
Great, thank you, Alexander. That's really helpful. So we have given you there a flavour of the contributions and insights that different funders involved in the project have taken from GRAIL. We wanted to also hear a couple of perspectives from outside the project, so we're not purely listening to ourselves, as it were. And I hope we'll also have some time to take some of the more critical points being raised in the chat. I'm pleased to see my good friend David Colhoun is there robustly ensuring that we hold ourselves to higher standards of rigor as usual, which is good. Hello, David. But let's hear first. We've got two perspectives. First, we're going to hear from Jen Gold, who is the co-head of the UK Meta Science Unit, which, as many of you will know, was set up now just around 18 months ago, sitting astride UKRI and the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology here in London as a novel and exciting centre for meta-scientific analysis. And Jen is going to give us a view, and then we'll hear after Jen from Lydia Borrell-Damian, who is the Secretary General of Science Europe. And Science Europe is also engaged in some quite exciting work with its constituent funders on AI, which I expect Lydia will tell us about. So Jen, over to you.
Lovely, thanks so much, and wonderful to be able to join you all. So I sort of wear two hats in my day job. So I am both Director of Research at the Economic and Social Research Council, which is part of UK Research and Innovation, which, to those of you not familiar, is the UK's largest public funding agency for science and research. And as James said, also co-lead the UK Meta Science Unit, which is joint between the UK Research and Innovation and Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, and very much with a mandate to run experiments and commission research that gives us more information about how to fund and support science more effectively. We aim to both sort of shape science policy and funding practices, and this very much, the topic of this book falls very much within our remit of understanding sort of how AI can support the more sort of effective funding and support for research. I just wanted to start really by just commending this initiative. I think struck by sort of Denny's comments at the beginning of the webinar around the aims being to sort of ensure that community of learning and practice among funders. And I think in this area, probably more than any other, given the sort of sensitivities and quite, bright sort of public scrutiny around AI and its application, that sort of mutual learning and community of practice is really, really important. And I speak, from the perspective for someone working in a public funder of research and innovation, it can be sort of more challenging from a risk appetite perspective to be at the forefront of using AI in funding processes. That's not to say we don't run innovative trials, and there aren't many bits of our operations where it's, it's not particularly sensitive, using it to AI technologies to support horizon scanning, for instance. But generally speaking, it is easier to sort of introduce changes to practice if we can point to evidence that intervention has worked elsewhere, and particularly sort of peer funders. And, the reality is that in many instances, for instance, philanthropic funders can have more freedom to experiment in a way that can be slightly more challenging in as a public funder of research. So I just really value these sorts of opportunities for funders to share across jurisdictions and practices, because it really does help us all think about how to change our practices and what's worked and what hasn't. So as I sort of mentioned, this is for us a huge area of interest in the meta science unit, and I was quite struck by the sort of final section on the 7 directions for potential experimentation of AI by funders, of just how I noted that this sort of book and project was sort of a couple of years in the making, and I can well imagine that some of the ideas may have felt a little bit more far-fetched than when you started out the project than by the time you've come to publication, just because of how rapidly technologies are changing. And in terms of sort of AI literacy of the population, including those that work in funding agencies, sort of people being sort of happy and more comfortable using these activities. So while by no means some of these areas for potential experimentation are certainly not widespread across funders, I can see, sort of begin to sort of map practices that perhaps, say, a few years ago would have sounded harder to make work. And then just for those of you who haven't had a chance to read the book yet, those 7 applications I'm referring to are AI in reviewer matching, which we've heard about today, AI in peer reviewing, AI for prioritizing funding applications, AI for research assessment exercises, AI for applicant self-assessment, AI for navigating funding resources, and finally AI in strategic planning. And I just thought I'd just finish by saying a couple of the ways in which the Meta Science Unit is trying to contribute to the body of knowledge in this area. So we've recently funded a number of sort of exploratory research grants to understand or build on existing studies, looking at the potential for large language models to support peer review processes. So that includes 2 grants that some of which have been some of the report authors are involved in, that look at the extent to which LLMs can reliably review academic work and score it for quality, focusing on this example in the Handbook on the UK Research Excellence Framework, which is a national research evaluation exercise and is used in academic journal peer review. And we're also supporting a project that's using our own data, so historic data, and looking sort of retrospectively at where the extent to which LLMs could have been used to streamline the grant review process effectively while maintaining quality. So looking particularly at their application in the use of AI for desk rejection, so a sort of demand management technique where we would need to send fewer out to peer review. A second application is the AI as an additional reviewer in the review process, and also AI as a meta reviewer to support moderation, panel discussions and the moderation of assessed grants. And we really just hope that those projects will help us sort of understand more and build on the existing evidence base about sort of feasibility and effectiveness of AI-assisted peer review. Because at the moment we don't allow within UKRI AI at all in our peer review processes. We do allow applicants to use AI responsibly within the grants drafting, but not within the review process. And then just the final activity that sort of really feeds in and sort of aligns with examples given in the book was in terms of, I think the book rightly points out that sort of AI isn't just relevant to sort of funding decisions or the assessment of quality, but also for its use in strategic planning. And while we're already seeing it used sort of widely in supporting sort of horizon scanning, we're also giving some top-up funding to a major infrastructure investment that's looking that's using AI technology and evidence synthesis methods. And we want to understand the extent to which AI-enabled evidence synthesis, which is sort of helping, can help funders sort of understand the strength of evidence in particular areas and identify sort of gaps and areas of sort of weak evidence that need to be addressed, and the extent to which sort of AI-enabled evidence synthesis can help reshape funders' portfolios. And we can sort of use smarter funders by really understanding the sort of scope and scale of existing research in a particular area, which isn't as easy to do as it might sound at the moment. So I was going to stop there, but just really commend everybody that was involved in this project, because I think it's only by bringing to light this sort of activity and say the community of like-minded sort of innovators that we're ever going to get to the point where when we have identified effective practice, we're able to scale it. So a huge thank you to everyone involved.
Excellent. Thank you, Jen, very much. That's really, really helpful. Let's move then to Lydia from Science Europe. Science Europe, of course, the umbrella body for all of the public funding agencies across Europe. Lydia.
Thank you, James. Thank you very much. And first of all, a word of congratulations to you, James, as director of the Institute, and to the authors of this excellent report, John, Dennis, Helen, Yuyu, and Mike. It is really a great contribution to the community. And as it is referred into the report, it's mostly for funders, but definitely there is a place for reflection for everyone. From Science Europe perspective, also I would like to mention that we are very proud that 7 of the 13 members of partners of this project are Science Europe members, of course, RCN and SNSF, but also the Swedish Research Council, the EFG, UKRI, who else? FWF, of course, NWO, I don't think I'm forgetting anybody. So very proud that they all have contributed so enthusiastically to this first hallmark report, I would say, on guidelines for research funders. In Science Europe, we started the dialogue on AI a little bit later than you started, structurally speaking, at the level of kind of going to about it in a structured way with consultations or about membership in 2023. That's what we started. And in fact, I think that among the participants, my former colleague Nicola Dotti is here, who started that together with me to set up in motion different discussion fora in Science Europe about AI. Since then, we have explored several issues about uses of the AI in research, in research evaluation processes, also targeted in this report, on legal aspects, on science communication, and lately on open science. So we have this broad approach to artificial intelligence to try and analyze different aspects on how AI contributes to different aspects of the whole research process, fully incorporating the views of funders and performers, which are everybody is a member in Science Europe, no? National research fundings and national research performers. With them, it's a very good mix of members because it allows to have a full overview of the research process from call concept through to all peer review for application, the execution, implementation of research, and publication. And in fact, we are about to consolidate the setting up of a working group that will start running next week after all these discussions with a series of clear objectives. Some of them I was very pleased because we developed these objectives from the Science Europe perspective, but then I saw the issues that you are highlighting in your report, and I see that there is a great deal of commonality. So it's very nice that it is a sort of a validation, a reflection that came from Science Europe members and your reflections. Of course, you are more focused on research funders, But anyway, as I said, it really is, there is a unique role for both funding and performing organizations, because they all have their different perspectives, rightly so. I would like perhaps to highlight 3 or 4 issues that struck me from your report, in the sense that they are also quite similar to those in the guidelines. In Science Europe Reflections, which is the analysis of both the potentials of AI and the limitations. I think this is very important. Some of you are highlighting this in the chat, I see that. But there are limitations to avoid, for example, self-referential processes, and to also understand the role of AI, not only as an assistant to the process, but also as a partner in the process. And that is perhaps something that needs more exploration and experimentation, and we will be able to do so as the tools evolve, which happens by the minute, as we are here in this meeting. No, there are also some other strategy issues, not only to define strategies, but also to define a strategic approaches to AI. In terms of governance, in terms of sovereignty and security. So all these are very issues that require much more in-depth reflection that we have done up until now. There is another important element, in addition to everything. What I'm saying is highlights, because your report is so very rich, so it's a little bit difficult. But just to concentrate on a few aspects, I would like to highlight also the aspect of publications, the scholarly publication system, and how AI is enabling all sorts of products that can or are useful for researchers, and what is our position on that, and how we can expect researchers to use them ethically, to build a bridge to the ethical point that you make, which is indeed very important. Last but not least, I would like to make commend you for this emphasis on people. Everything that we do needs to be double-checked by people, because of the risks that we are all aware, or not so aware, or at least in unintended consequences. So it is very good that the human element remains central in any process related to AI. We in Science Europe, we will continue this work, and it would be perhaps good to continue it in part with you. I think Jon already had some preliminary ideas in this respect, and we can develop them further. We in Science Europe, apart from, as a result of our internal discussions, we have contributed to several consultations of the European Commission regarding AI. The Living Guidelines is an example. We were in that committee, in the Ethical Committee. We are also, we have contributed recently to the call for evidence that the Commission has launched regarding the AI strategy for Europe. And that is our plan as well, to continue in-depth reflection, first to serve the Science Europe members in how to best use AI for their own processes, but also to contribute to all the policy developments that are at this moment being generated, or that they will be generated in the future. And I think that with this, I would like to stop here, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Great, thank you, Lydia, very much. And I think from our side as well, we very much welcome opportunities to collaborate with Science Europe on a further basis as we sort of take this all forward. We are tight on time, 3 minutes or so left. I want to say a word about my Science 25 at the end, but let's just pick up. I mean, there's been some good to and fro in the chat on some of the risks and dilemmas in this terrain. I think anyone who reads the report will see quite quickly that it is quite cautious and careful in its navigation of these dilemmas. It's certainly not some sort of uncritical boosterism for AI. But I don't know, Denny or any of the other members of the project, if you just in 1 minute, really, you want to just come back on some of those, because I mean, you know, legitimately, people obviously will ask, those questions. They're important questions to surface. And I mean, in a minute or so, if you just have a quick response to some of that.
Yes. Yeah, they absolutely are, and thank you for asking them. So I think there's two pieces to the brief response. One is think that, you know, AI is a much broader umbrella than just the kind of ChatGPTs and Geminis and so on of the world. That those are a lot of the technologies that are sitting in front of us, and they're a lot of what people are interacting with. But there's much more that's under that, you know, including bespoke machine learning models with sort of older approaches. And that's a lot of what's actually being used in practice. And so a lot of what we're advocating for in the handbook and a lot of the practices that we show and what, you know, what we really illustrate and what we've talked about in the project is about understanding, starting with understanding what is it that you want to accomplish, what are the limitations and the opportunities that the different technologies that are available have for that, and then being able to take that more critical, more informed approach to using AI. So it really is about not sort of just throwing everything to ChatGPT or another AI system, but understanding what is it that I want to do, what can this help with, and what kinds of risks does it pose, and so how do I bring the people and the processes in to manage that?
Thanks, Denny, very much. We are out of time, David. I'm sorry, you'll have to kind of pick this debate up with Denny and others offline, as it were. But thank you again for comments in the chat. As I say, there will be lots of scope to discuss this. Those who are coming to MetaScience 2025, we've got several sessions that are focusing on not only the more specific questions that we're trying to address in this handbook, around the uses of these technologies by research funders in their systems and processes, but also some of the far broader ways in which AI is being adopted and used in other parts of science. So do hopefully come and join us there. I would say sign up for MetaScience 25. Unfortunately, it's now oversubscribed, and we are in dangerous proximity to sort of breaching the fire safety limits of the Logan Hall, which is the biggest venue UCL has to offer. We have, I think, 800 or so, slightly over now, people joining us from 61 countries at the last count. So there will be a rich crowd there, but of course it won't be the end of these discussions, and they will continue both through RoRI and through Science Europe and many other fora that we're all part of. But thanks again from my side to all of those involved. This is the beginning of us rolling the report out. There'll be lots more discussions around it, but it's great that we've got to this point. I think it's a really valuable contribution. My thanks again to all of the partners involved and to the core team. And I hope we will see many of you in London at UCL for MetaScience 2025. Thank you very much.